She crawled into his bed wearing almost nothing. Claiming it was an Apache ritual, he stayed silent. The night pressed close around the camp, not with menace but with a weight that made every breath feel deliberate. And Elias sat awake on the edge of his narrow bed, listening to the quiet language of the woods he had learned over months of living, beyond the edge of towns and rules, where memory and survival often blurred into the same thing. He had come west chasing something he could not name, a silence loud enough to drown his past, and the trading post owner who hired him to guard supply routes had warned him about many things: storms that arrived without notice, men who smiled before they stole, loneliness that crept in like a slow fever. But he had not warned him about her. Naya had appeared weeks ago with the other Apache families who moved through the area on rhythms older than any map he owned. And from the first moment, Elias sensed that she carried stories she did not explain, wearing them the way others wore scars. She spoke little, yet when she did, her words felt measured, as if each one had survived a long journey before leaving her mouth. Elias noticed how people deferred to her without ceremony, how even the elders paused when she looked their way. And though she never announced authority, it followed her like a shadow. That evening, after a long day of hauling supplies and repairing a broken wheel, Elias returned to his tent exhausted, muscles aching, mind fogged by memories he tried not to revisit. And he lay down fully clothed, expecting nothing more than a few hours of restless sleep. The fire outside burned low, its faint crackle stitching the silence together, and when footsteps approached, he assumed it was someone checking the perimeter, until the tent flap lifted. Without hesitation, and Naya stepped inside, as if she had always belonged there. She did not ask permission, did not explain herself, and the lamplight revealed that she wore almost nothing, her clothing minimal, deliberate, not careless. And for a moment, Elias wondered if exhaustion had finally broken something inside him. She moved with certainty, lowering herself onto the bed beside him, close enough that he felt warmth without contact. And when he turned to speak, to ask what was happening, she placed a finger lightly against his chest, not to silence him, but to steady him, and said in a calm, unwavering voice that this was an Apache ritual, one that required stillness and respect, one that asked nothing from him but silence. Elias had faced guns and hunger and loss, yet nothing prepared him for the discipline, required to remain unmoving when instinct urged him to react, to question, to flee or reach out. And he realized that whatever this moment was, it was not about desire in the way men often reduced such encounters. Her presence carried gravity, not invitation, and as she lay back, facing the tent ceiling, her breathing slow and even, Elias felt the strange pull of responsibility settle over him. As if by staying silent he had agreed to bear witness to something fragile. His thoughts raced despite his still body, memories colliding with the present. His mother's quiet endurance, his father's disappearance, the war he never spoke about, and he wondered if Naya sensed this turbulence, if that was why she had chosen him. Time stretched, minutes dissolving into something less precise, and in that shared quiet he became acutely aware of the world beyond the thin canvas walls, the distant call of an owl, the shifting of embers, the soft wind moving through pine needles like breath through hair. At last, unable to hold the question any longer, he whispered her name, barely a sound, and she turned her head to look at him, eyes dark and reflective, not startled, not offended, simply present. She told him that rituals were not performances, not explanations for outsiders, but bridges between what had been broken and what still remembered. How to hold together, and that silence was not emptiness but a promise. Elias nodded, unsure if he understood, but feeling that understanding was not required, only acceptance, and as the night deepened, he remained awake, counting heartbeats instead of hours, aware that by choosing not to speak further, not to move, he was participating in something that would mark him whether he wanted it to or not. When dawn began to thin the darkness, Naya rose without ceremony, gathering herself with the same quiet resolve she had entered with. And before leaving, she paused at the tent opening and said that some stories did not ask to be told, only carried, leaving Elias alone with a sense that the silence he had offered had been taken seriously, and that whatever followed would demand more than words from him. The morning after Naya left, his tent did not arrive with revelation or clarity, but with a quiet heaviness that settled into Elias's bones, as if the night had rearranged something inside him and now expected him to live with the new order without explanation. He moved through the camp, performing his tasks by muscle memory alone, repairing a loose strap, checking supplies, nodding when spoken to, Yet everything felt slightly out of alignment, like walking with a healed but still tender wound. Naya did not appear that day, nor the next, and no one mentioned her absence, which unsettled him more than if they had spoken openly, because it confirmed what she had implied, that whatever had happened was not meant for discussion. Elias replayed the night in fragments, not as a memory of proximity but of restraint, the discipline it had taken to remain still, to listen without interpreting, and he realized that silence had demanded more courage from him than action ever had. Days passed, and with them came small tests, a traitor pressing him for gossip, a fellow guard joking crudely about Apache customs, moments where Elias felt the pull to explain, to defend, to reduce the experience into something manageable, yet each time he held back, honoring the promise he hadn't known he was making. When Naya finally returned, it was not to his tent, but to the fire circle at dusk, where elders spoke in low voices and children listened without interrupting. And she acknowledged Elias only with a brief glance that carried neither gratitude nor distance, just recognition. That look unsettled him more than any conversation could have, because it placed responsibility squarely on his shoulders without outlining its shape. Later that night, she approached him openly, sitting across from him near the dying fire, and asked him what he had heard in the silence. Not what he had thought or felt, but what he had heard. And the question forced him inward in a way no one had ever demanded before. He spoke slowly, choosing words as carefully as she always had, describing the sounds of the night, the way his own breathing had sounded foreign to him, the memories that had surfaced uninvited, and how he had realized that his life had been a series of escapes, disguised as choices. Naya listened without interruption, her expression steady, and when he finished, she told him that the ritual was not about her body or his restraint, but about testing whether he could sit with truth without trying to fix it, own it, or run from it. She explained that her people believed some wounds spoke only in stillness, and that the world was full of men who filled silence with noise to avoid hearing themselves. Elias felt exposed, not judged, and in that exposure he sensed the beginning of something fragile but honest. Over the following weeks, Naya began to speak to him more, not often but with intention, sharing fragments of her history, losses carried across generations, responsibilities inherited without consent, the burden of being seen as a symbol rather than a person, and Elias found himself responding in kind, telling her about the brother he couldn't save, the choices he made that kept him alive but hollow, the fear that if he ever stopped moving forward, everything he avoided would catch him. Their conversations were never long, never sentimental, yet each one stripped something unnecessary away, leaving him quieter, steadier, more present. When conflict eventually came, as it always did on contested land, Elias was forced to choose where he stood, and for the first time, he did not rush toward the role expected of him. He listened, weighed silence against action, and when he spoke, he did so clearly, refusing to let fear dictate his loyalty. The decision cost him his position, his safety, and the fragile anonymity he had relied on, but it earned him something he had never possessed before: alignment. On the night he prepared to leave the camp for good, uncertain of where he would go, but certain of who he was becoming, Naya visited him once more, not entering his bed this time but standing at the threshold, the distance between them intentional. She told him that rituals ended when their purpose was fulfilled, not when comfort was achieved, and that silence was not meant to trap him but to teach him how to listen, even when the world demanded noise. Elias thanked her without dramatics, understanding that gratitude did not need performance, and as she turned away, he realized that what she had given him was not mystery or temptation, but a mirror he could no longer look away from. When he walked out of the camp at dawn, carrying only what he needed, the woods felt different, not quieter but clearer, and for the first time, Elias did not feel the urge to outrun his past, because he had learned how to sit with it, hear it, and let it speak without drowning in its voice.